The board had been sitting on our coffee table for 3 full days. It was a wooden Ouija board with worn-out letters that we had scavenged from an old attic. Initially, the 3 of us, myself, my cousin Sarah, and her best friend Lisa, were enthusiastic. We imagined communicating with ancestral spirits, solving mysteries, or at least getting a small scare to spike our adrenaline. However, reality was deeply disappointing. For 72 hours, we tried everything. We dimmed the lights, lit candles, placed our trembling fingers on the planchette, and asked, "Is anyone here?" But the board remained mute. There was no movement, no sudden cold drafts, and certainly no ghosts. Our fear slowly curdled into boredom, and that boredom eventually mutated into dismissal. By the 3rd day, the Ouija board had completely lost its mystical aura. The object that was supposed to be a gateway to another world had transitioned into the function of a regular wooden tray. We had absolutely no respect for it left. On that lazy afternoon, instead of summoning spirits, we used the flat surface of the board as a table to roll smokes and place our snacks. Crumbs of tobacco and ash scattered over the letters A through Z, covering the sun and moon symbols carved into the wood. "If ghosts were real," Sarah said with a chuckle, her fingers busy tidying up the rolling papers on the board, "they'd be pretty pissed we're using the board like this." We laughed. It was an empty laugh, full of arrogance. The atmosphere in the living room felt incredibly mundane and worldly. The television was on low volume, broadcasting a bland sitcom. The fading afternoon sunlight filtered through the gaps in the curtains, casting long shadows across the floor. There was not a single warning sign. After finishing her task, Sarah slid the board slightly to the center of the table, then lay back on the plush sofa. She looked completely relaxed, staring at her phone screen, scrolling through social media with the blank stare of someone killing time. Lisa and I sat on the rug, still chatting lightly about trivial things. This is where the mistake began. A small movement that seemed harmless. Sarah stretched her arms, yawned wide, and with a lazy reflex, she lowered her right hand. She placed her smartphone down on the table surface, or rather, she placed it directly on the Ouija board. The modern electronic device landed on the sacred old wood, and in that instant, the silence of the afternoon shattered into pieces. The second the back of Sarah's phone touched the wooden surface of the Ouija board, the atmosphere in the room shifted drastically. It wasn't gradual, it was instantaneous, like someone flipping a light switch. The first thing we felt was the vibration. The phone didn't just buzz like it was receiving a text message. It vibrated with unnatural violence, rattling loudly against the wood as if something inside it wanted to explode out. Our heavy coffee table actually shook from the intensity. "Hey, what's wrong with your phone?" I asked, not yet realizing the horror that was about to unfold. Before Sarah could answer, a light turned on. The screen remained pitch black, but a small indicator light at the top of the phone ignited with a blinding blood-red glow. It was a thick, sharp, evil red. The light projected across the room, casting a crimson hue over our faces, which were already draining of color. Then, the sound came. It wasn't a ringtone, it wasn't music. From the phone's tiny speakers exploded a sound at a volume impossible for such a small device to produce. It filled every corner of the living room, deafening us and making our hearts feel like they had stopped beating. It was screaming. Not one person, but what sounded like thousands of people screaming in agony simultaneously from within a deep cavern. Underneath the sorrowful shrieks, there was fast, aggressive muttering. Heavy voices speaking in a language we didn't recognize, speaking in tongues that sound ancient and full of rage. The voices overlapped, pushing and shoving to escape the electronic device. "Turn it off! Turn it off!" Lisa screamed, covering her ears. Sarah panicked. She tried to grab her phone, but her hands were trembling violently. The sound grew louder, as if the walls of our living room were screaming along with it. It felt as though the gates of hell had been cracked open and placed right on our coffee table. The three of us were frozen in pure terror, paralyzed by a fear that seeped into our marrow. The event might have only lasted 10 seconds, but it felt like an hour of torture. Suddenly, just as quickly as it started, everything stopped. The red light vanished. The vibrations ceased. The screams of thousands of spirits went silent. The phone went dead. Silence. A silence far more terrifying than before. Without discussing it, we moved on survival instinct. Sarah knocked her phone onto the floor. I grabbed the Ouija board, not daring to touch it with my bare skin. I used the sleeve of my jacket and ran out of the house. We threw the board into the large dumpster on the curb, making sure the lid was locked tight, as if that could contain whatever was attached to it. We returned inside, breathing heavily, and locked the door tight. We sat huddled together, still shaking. Sarah picked up her phone from the floor hesitantly. She turned the device over in her hands, her face turning even paler, whiter than a sheet. "Why?" I asked quietly. Sarah looked at me with wide eyes, her finger pointing to the top bezel of her phone where the light had come from. Her voice was a whisper, hoarse from the lingering fear. "You saw that red light, right?" she asked. I nodded. "This phone," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "This model doesn't have an LED indicator light at all. There is no red light inside this machine." Honestly, I never really believed in the supernatural. When my friends dared me to try a Ouija board, I just laughed and thought it was a ridiculous game. They said, "If you're scared, don't join." Of course, my pride wouldn't let me back down. That night, we gathered in Ethan's living room. The lights were dimmed on purpose, with only a small candle flickering like it was breathing. The Ouija board sat in the middle of an old wooden table, its carvings looking creepy, almost as if the board itself was watching us. "Let's start," Ethan said, placing his fingertips on the planchette. I and our other two friends, Maya and Josh, followed and touched it lightly. We all took a deep breath together. "If there's a spirit here, give us a sign," Ethan asked. At first, nothing happened. Silence. Uncomfortably quiet. I was about to crack a joke when the planchette suddenly moved, very slowly, but enough to make us stare at each other with pale faces. "Are you a good spirit?" Maya asked, her voice trembling. The planchette slid to N, then O, and stopped. No. The hairs on my arms stood straight, but we continued, maybe out of curiosity, or maybe just stupidity. The planchette moved faster, spelling out a sentence that made my heart drop. I am here for you. Maya burst into tears. Ethan looked like he'd lost all color in his face. I tried to stay calm and said quickly, "We need to close it now. Say goodbye." We waited. The planchette stayed still, not moving at all. "Hurry! Close the session!" I shouted. Finally, it slid to goodbye. We all snatched our hands away. The candle blew out instantly, as if someone had blown on it. We didn't talk much afterward. Everyone wanted to go home as fast as possible. At home, I tried to sleep, convincing myself it was just our imagination. But exactly at 4 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging, like someone walking with heavy feet. I held my breath. The house was supposed to be silent. I lived alone. The steps got closer. The wooden floor creaked, creating a rhythm that made my chest tighten painfully. I grabbed my phone to turn on the flashlight, but my hands were shaking. Then I heard it. A breathing sound, long and heavy, right outside my bedroom door. It didn't sound human. It sounded wet, broken, full of rage. I covered my mouth to keep from screaming. The doorknob turned slowly, very slowly. I froze, unable to move. My phone flickered and shut off. In that complete darkness, I heard a whisper right next to my ear, so close I felt the cold breath brush my skin. Not done. I screamed, and the lights flicked back on instantly. The door was still closed. No one was there. But on the window pane there was a black handprint, long like claws, pressed from the outside. Since that night, every morning at 4 a.m. the footsteps return, and the whisper is always the same. I am here. It all started a few years ago. That night, my friend and I were bored and wanted to try something exciting. We found an old Ouija board in my basement. A stupid idea? Absolutely. But curiosity was stronger than common sense. We sat in the dim living room, lit only by a small table lamp. My heart pounded as we placed our fingertips on the planchette. I tried to joke to ease the tension. "Is there a spirit here?" I asked. The planchette slid slowly, spelling yes. My friend and I looked at each other, trying to laugh, but the laughter felt dry and shaky. My friend asked again, voice trembling, "Will you hurt us?" The planchette moved once more. Yes. The atmosphere shifted instantly, from a silly game to a real threat. I quickly said, "Okay, thank you, goodbye." but instead the planchette spelled hello. Panic surged through me. Not hello, I said goodbye, but the planchette moved faster than before, letters flying beneath our fingers, K-I-L-L. My friend yanked his hand away. End it, let's get rid of this. We said goodbye and lifted our hands. I reached for the box, but the board slid across the table on its own, as if alive. The planchette moved again. Up, stairs. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. We were too terrified to go upstairs. We grabbed the board, rushed it down to the basement, and locked the door as fast as we could. But the moment the lock clicked, loud footsteps thundered from below, climbing the stairs rapidly, pounding against the wood. I froze. Then a whisper brushed right against my ear. A child's voice, soft, cold, and far too close. Hello. I jumped so hard, I nearly fell. The lights flickered wildly, like the electricity was about to die. Everything on the shelves shook violently and crashed to the floor, thrown by something we could not see. In the corner of the basement, I saw dark figures, many of them, darting around. My friend screamed, "We have to go, now!" We ran upstairs and slammed the basement door shut. My breath was shaking, and then suddenly, the house became silent, completely silent. Then from upstairs, a baby began to cry. We stared at each other. There was no baby in this house. A loud crash erupted from the second floor, like furniture being thrown against the walls. Heavy running, doors slamming, glass shattering. We covered our ears and crouched down, but the sounds came closer and closer, like something was trying to drive us back downstairs. Something hit my back hard. I fell down the stairs, pain exploding as if both my legs snapped. Tears burned in my eyes, but I clenched my teeth and kept silent. The front door opened. My mom's voice drifted in, calm and casual. "Hey, honey, I'm home." I opened my mouth to scream for help, but before a sound escaped, I saw it. A pitch-black figure crawled across the floor, moving on all fours like an animal. Its head was twisted unnaturally. Its eyes were hollow, and its mouth hung open. It sprinted toward me, and everything went black.